If you've watched this channel for any length of time, you already know I'm not the person who's going to stand in front of a doorbell camera, wave my arms, and tell you that the market is either the best time to buy or the worst time to sell. That's not what we do here. What I do is I look back at data, a lot of it, going back more than a year, and I let the patterns tell the story. I'm Perreault, and before I became a realtor, I spent years in aerospace engineering and Fortune 100 manufacturing. That background left me with a deep suspicion of single data points and a genuine love for trend analysis. So every week I pull the local MLS numbers, run them through a rolling average framework I developed specifically for this market, and report what I actually see, not what makes a good thumbnail or a good hook. Today is the week of March 30th through April 5th, 2026, which is Sunday, and the data is telling a story that has several chapters going on simultaneously. Let me walk you through all of them. So first, what's a rolling average and why should it matter? Before we get into the numbers, I want to take a moment to explain the methodology because it shapes everything I'm about to say. A weekly MLS figure is essentially a single measurement on a noisy instrument. Think about a temperature gauge on a piece of equipment. If you check the gauge once at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, you know what it read at that moment. But if you want to know whether the process is running hot, you average the readings across the last 12 hours or 24 hours or 12 shifts. That average smooths out the random variation and shows you the real underlying signal. I use 12-week rolling averages for the same reason. They smooth out the week where a big snowstorm dropped closings by 40% or the week where pent-up demand exploded the listings. The rolling average shows me what the market actually thinks it is, not what it happened to do on one particular Tuesday. And when I compare this 12-week window to the same 12-week window from 1 year ago, I can detect true directional change early, before it shows up in the headline numbers most people see. I call this the engineer's approach to real estate. If you're a geek like me, you're gonna like this channel. If the market is really changing, I see it here first. Okay, let's talk about the rate environment. Interest rates, because they're the faucet that controls how much demand flows into this market. This week, OnPoint Federal Credit Union, and I always use that because number one, it's a local number, not affected by what's going on in Austin, Texas or Chicago. It's local to Portland, and it's generally the lowest one I can find. So this week, OnPoint is quoting the 30-year fixed conventional rate at 6.25% with 0.225 in points and an APR of 6.33%. That's up from 6.125% the prior week. So the brief dip we saw last week has reversed. Looking at the 8-week trend in the rate data, we were sitting at 5.625% in mid-February, and we have climbed steadily to the 6 to 6.25% range. That's because of the Iraq War nonsense. That is a 62.5 basis point increase in about 7 weeks. Now that doesn't mean rates are spiraling out of control. They're not, but it does mean the affordability window that briefly cracked open in February has narrowed again. Buyers who got pre-approved at 5.9% need to revisit those numbers. What does this mean practically? For a $575,000 purchase with 20% down, which gets you close to our current median price, the difference between a 5.625% and a 6.25% rate is roughly $220 per month. That's real money. It doesn't completely kill demand, but it does push some buyers to the sidelines, and it reinforces a discipline on pricing that sellers need to understand. They've got to start thinking like the buyers in order to understand how to price. Okay, so on supply, the faucet is open. Active listings this week came in at 6,303. A year ago, the same week showed 5,577 homes on the market. That is a 13% increase in available inventory on a spot basis. But remember, I prefer rolling averages for the real picture. The 12-week rolling average for active listings is currently 5,837 compared to a rolling average of 5,229 a year ago. That's a plus 11.6% increase in the rolling inventory trend. The faucet has been open for months, and the supply of available homes is meaningfully higher than it was this time last year. New listings this week were 550, which matches the prior week exactly, an unusual coincidence. months. The rolling average for new listings is 576 per week compared to 508 a year ago, up 13.4%. Sellers are entering the market at a faster pace than they were a year ago. That is supply-side pressure that buyers benefit from and that sellers need to account for in how they position and price their homes, especially with the higher interest rate. Price reductions are one of the most telling leading indicators I track. This week, 602 price reductions hit the market, 575 standard reductions, and of those, 27 were significant cuts of $15,000 or more, totaling 298 reductions of $15,000 plus. The rolling average for total price reductions is 536 compared to 487 a year ago. That's a 10.1% increase. When sellers are reducing prices at a 10% higher rate than they were a year ago, that tells you that the market is not accepting wishful pricing. It's a discipline signal. Demand. Rising but measured. Here's where the story gets more nuanced. Demand is actually rising, but it is rising more slowly than supply. Homes sold this week came in at 574, which the MLS confirms compares to 492 the same week last year, a solid 16.7% improvement on the spot. The rolling average for homes sold is 424 compared to 402 a year ago, up 5.5%. Buyers are out there, they are buying. Total pending deals stand at 3,196 versus 3,090 a year ago, a 3.4% increase. New pending deals this week were 636 versus 625 last year, essentially flat on a spot basis. The rolling average for new pending is 611 compared to 557 last year, up 9.6%. Buyer activity is elevated compared to a year ago, but it has not kept pace with the increase in supply. That is the key dynamic. And again, I really believe this is because of the Iraq War and the interest rate changes that we've recently experienced. Think of it this way. If I told you that the number of people walking into a store went up 10%, but the number of items on the shelf went up 13%, the store is getting more competitive, more choices for shoppers, more pressure on the shelves that are less appealing. That's where we are. Okay, so months of supply, the big picture. When I divide the current active listings by the rolling average of homes sold, I get a months of supply figure. Right now that sits at approximately 14.9 months, which is over a year. A year ago, it was about 13.9 months, so we're getting a little slower. Anything over 6 months is generally considered a buyer's market in a traditional framework, though Portland Metro has historically operated with tighter supply than national averages. At nearly 15 months of supply on a rolling basis, we are firmly in a market where buyers have selection and time, and sellers need precision pricing to compete. Okay, price. This is the divergence story. Here's one of the most interesting things in this week's data, and it's a story I want you to pay close attention to. The average sale price this week was $629,753. That compares to $663,232 the same week last year, a decline of 5%. On its face, that sounds like prices are falling, but the median sale price this week was $573,710, which compares to $562,500 last year, an increase of 2%. So the average price is down 5%, but the median price is up 2%. Those numbers seem contradictory, but they're not. What they're telling you is that the mix of homes closing has shifted. Fewer high-priced homes are closing this year compared to last, maybe because sellers in that tier are holding out, and maybe because financing is tighter at higher price points when you get into jumbo loans. The typical home, the median home, is actually selling at a slightly higher price than last year. The middle of the market is holding. The 12-week rolling average for average sale price is $613,914. For median sale price, it's $543,174. Those rolling figures give you a much cleaner read on price trend than any single week. Okay, now let's talk about sale to list ratios. Pricing discipline is everything. I've been saying this for weeks, guys. The sale to list ratio this week tells the story of a market that is still rewarding correctly priced homes, but it is increasingly punishing overpriced ones. The average sale price as a percentage of the asking price was 99.64%. The median was 100.31%. That means the typical transaction is still closing at or above list price. Well-priced homes are not sitting. They are moving. But here's the caveat. The average sale price as a percentage of the original asking price, meaning before any reduction, was 97.76%. That gap between 99.64% of current list and 97.76% of original list tells you that the homes driving down the average had to reduce their prices. They eventually sold, but they gave up ground to do it. They would have been better off going in at a lower price in the first place. A year ago, the average sale to list was 100.05% and the median was 101.82%. The market is slightly less competitive than it was at this time last year, but it is not fallen off a cliff. Correctly priced homes are still performing well. Phil M. Jones would say, would it be okay if I gave you an honest assessment of where your home needs to be priced to compete? That's the conversation every listing appointment needs to have. And you really need to listen, because overpricing is the kiss of death in this market. Days on market, the thaw is real. Days on market is showing one of the more encouraging trends in the data right now. The average days on market this week came in at 63 days, matching the same figure from a year ago. The median days on market was 21 days, also matching last year exactly. But here's the context that matters. As recently as early February, we were seeing average days on market in the 83 to 85 day range. The fact that we have come down from 85 days in February to 63 days in early April is a meaningful improvement. The spring market activation is real. The 12-week rolling average for average days on market is 73.7 days, still elevated compared to the 60-day figure we saw at the same week last year, which tells you the rolling trend still reflects that winter sluggishness. But the most recent weeks are improving and the rolling average will follow. The median days on market rolling average of 41 days compared to 21 days this week shows how much the winter weeks weighed on that rolling figure. The point-in-time data is encouraging. So let's talk about implications for buyers. If you're a buyer in this market, you're in a better position than buyers were a year ago. And you have more choices than you've had in a while. With 6,303 active listings and a median days on market of 21 days, there are homes sitting long enough for you to be thoughtful, especially when you're in the higher bracket. You are not competing in a panic market. That said, do not mistake less competitive for no competition. Well-priced homes in desirable areas that are well presented are still moving quickly. The median sale at 100.31% of list tells you that. Get pre-approved at today's rates, not last month's rates. Know your ceiling and do not expect every seller to immediately accept an offer 10% below list. That tactic works on the overpriced listings that have been sitting around for months. It does not work on the homes that priced right the first time. Let's talk about what it means for sellers. If you're a seller, the data is giving you a clear message. The market isn't broken, but it's not forgiving. With 13.4% more new listings entering the market on a rolling basis than a year ago, and price reductions running 10% higher, you are competing in a more crowded field. The sellers who are winning are the ones who price with precision from day one. The average sale as a percentage of original asking price, 97.76%, tells you that sellers who had to reduce ultimately recovered close to their original ask. But the days on market and the price reduction counts tell you the emotional cost of getting there. Days of uncertainty, multiple price cuts, stigma that causes buyers to wonder what's wrong with this house. Pricing discipline is not a concession, it's a strategy. The sellers who understand that are the ones closing in 21 days at 100% of list. Move up and move down households. Those are the move up buyers, someone selling a current home and purchasing a larger or more expensive one. This market presents a specific opportunity. On the sell side, you are in a slightly more competitive environment than last year, which means pricing precision matters. But on the buy side, you have more selection, more negotiating room in the upper price tiers where the average sale price has softened more. If you've been waiting for the right time, the data suggests that the gap between what you're giving up on your sale and what you're gaining on your purchase is actually narrowing in your favor. For the move down household, someone selling a larger home and simplifying, downsizing, possibly moving into a one-level house. A lot of people are doing that these days. The same logic applies in a different direction. Your current home is in a segment where pricing has softened more. But if you're moving into the $400,000 to $550,000 range, that segment is still competitive and well-priced inventory moves fast. Plan your sequence carefully. Let's talk about bumpables and REO short sales. So a quick note on a couple of additional data points. There are currently 69 bumpable contracts in the market. Those are deals that are contingent on the buyer selling their current home. If someone can't sell their home in time and somebody else comes along with an offer, they can actually be bumped out of escrow with some specifics around that. That number has been fairly stable in the 70 to 80 range for several months. It's not alarming, but it's a reminder that transaction chains are real and the sellers accepting contingent offers are taking on some risk. REO and short sale activity remains minimal at 80 active and 99 pending distress-related properties. That's not a stress signal for the market overall. Distressed inventory is not a meaningful driver of anything we're seeing in Portland. It's just too small a percentage to really move the market. Okay, final takeaways. Let me wrap this up with the clean summary. The Portland Metro and Clark County market for the week of March 30th through April 5th, 2026 looks like this. Supply is elevated, up 11.6% on a rolling basis versus a year ago. Demand is rising, but slower than supply. Prices are holding at the median, softening at the average. A mixed shift story, not a price collapse. Well-priced homes are selling at or above list in a median of 21 days. Overpriced homes are getting reduced, eventually selling, but at a cost. Rates ticked up to 6.25% this week, which is a headwind that requires buyers to shop with current pre-approvals and sellers to price with precision. If this kind of data-driven market analysis is useful to you, please subscribe to this channel and hit the bell. Every week, same format, same depth of analysis. The blog version of this analysis with links to charts and additional data is at pdxhomesforsale.com. And if you're thinking about buying or selling in the Portland Metro or the Vancouver, Washington area, my contact information is below. Lauren at pdxhomesforsale.com or 503-683-1885. I'd love to help. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week.